I had been running around all day, making sure everything was perfect for the charity event. The football team I managed was hosting, and it was crucial everything went smoothly. By the time the guests started pouring in, I was already exhausted but had to keep the smile plastered on. I was checking the auction items when I first saw him. John was hard to miss. He was handing out programs at the door, his smile genuine and reaching his eyes. I figured he was just another volunteer, but something about him caught my attention. "Need a hand with those?" His voice was warm as he approached me by the auction table. I looked up, a bit startled. "Oh, thanks, but I think I've got it under control," I said, stacking the last of the brochures. "Sure looks like it," he chuckled, glancing around at the well-organized venue. "John," he extended his hand, which I shook, feeling his firm grip. "Emily," I introduced myself, trying to ignore the little spark that shot through me at the contact. "So, Emily, you run this whole operation?" His eyebrows shot up, clearly impressed. "Yeah, I manage the team and organize these events. It's a lot, but I love it." John nodded, his eyes scanning the room before settling back on me. "Looks like you do a great job. It's nice seeing so much support for a good cause." The conversation flowed effortlessly. We talked about the event, the team, and somehow drifted into more personal territories like our favorite movies and books. It was refreshing to talk to someone who was genuinely interested in what I had to say. "So, you volunteer often?" I asked, sipping my drink as we leaned against a high table. "Whenever I can. My buddy dragged me here, but I'm glad he did." John's smile was infectious, and I found myself grinning back. "Dragged? Really, that's the story you're going with?" I teased, raising an eyebrow. He laughed, a sound that was hearty and sincere. "Okay, maybe not exactly dragged. I wanted to come. And I'm glad I did, meeting you is a bonus." As the night wore on, I realized I was enjoying myself more than I had at any previous event. It wasn't just the success of the evening, it was John. He was easy to talk to, didn't put on airs, and didn't shy away from showing his interest. His down-to-earth nature was a breath of fresh air in the usual snooty crowds I mingled with. "Hey, before this night ends, can I see you again?" John's question caught me a bit off guard, not by the content but by the earnestness in his voice. "I'd like that," I admitted, my usual guarded self taking a back seat. "Great, it's a date then," he said with a confident nod, his smile wide. As I watched him mingle with other guests, thanking them for their contributions, I couldn't help but feel like maybe, just maybe, this was the start of something special. The drive over to John's parents' place was quiet, too quiet. I kept fidgeting with the hem of my skirt, my stomach in knots. John noticed, of course, and reached over to give my hand a reassuring squeeze. "It's gonna be fine, Em. They're gonna love you," he said with a smile, but I could tell he was a bit nervous too. As we pulled into the driveway of a tidy suburban home, my anxiety ramped up. John's mom, Martha, and his sister, Karen, were already waiting at the door as we walked up. Their smiles were tight, almost forced. "John, and you must be Emily," Martha said, her voice sweet but her eyes scanning me like a hawk. She offered a cheek kiss that barely touched my cheek. "Nice to meet you, Mrs. Smith," I managed to say, trying to sound confident. "Please, call me Martha. And this is Karen." She gestured to a woman who looked a lot like John, but with sharper edges. Karen's smile didn't quite reach her eyes as she shook my hand. "Heard a lot about you, Emily." John can't stop talking. The inside of the house was as neat as the exterior, every piece of furniture and decor perfectly in place. We sat down in the living room, and the small talk started, the kind that pricked at you under the surface. "So, Emily, John tells us you manage a football team? That's an interesting choice for a career," Martha said, her tone dripping with something that sounded like disapproval. I shifted in my seat, feeling the weight of her judgment. "Yes, I love sports, and it's a fulfilling job. The team is like a family." "A family of big, burly men," Karen chimed in, her words sharp. Must be tough, keeping them all in line. I laughed, a bit uneasy. They're not that hard to manage, really. We respect each other a lot. Dinner was served shortly after, and the atmosphere didn't get any lighter. Every question felt like a test, every answer I gave scrutinized. Martha passed the salad. I suppose in your line of work, you don't get much time for finer pursuits? Reading, art? I find time, I said, keeping my tone light. I love reading. And I do enjoy art when I can. Karen snorted softly. What's your favorite book then? I mentioned a recent bestseller, a thriller I'd actually enjoyed quite a bit. Ah, light reading, Karen dismissed it quickly. I prefer classics myself. More depth, you know? I nodded, feeling out of my depth. The meal continued with more of these little jabs, veiled in politeness, but sharp enough to sting. John tried to change the subject a few times, bringing up neutral topics like movies and vacation plans, but the tension hovered like a cloud over the table. After dinner, John and I helped clear the table, and he whispered, "You okay?" "Yeah, just didn't realize it would be an interrogation," I whispered back, trying to smile. We said our goodbyes soon after, Martha's farewell as cool as her welcome. "Lovely to meet you, Emily. We must do this again soon," she said, her smile tight. As John and I walked back to the car, I felt a mix of relief and frustration. Relief that the evening was over, and frustration that it hadn't gone as I'd hoped. Wedding planning was supposed to be fun, or so I thought. But every decision felt like walking through a minefield with John's mom and his sister having an opinion on everything. From the color of the napkins to the seating arrangements, nothing escaped their scrutiny. "Really, Emily, chartreuse for the bridesmaids? It's such a vibrant choice," Martha had said one afternoon, eyeing my color swatches like they were toxic waste. I tried to keep my cool, clenching my fists under the table. "John likes it. It's lively, don't you think?" Karen had snorted, flipping through a bridal magazine. "If you're aiming for lively, sure. Most would prefer classy, though." Their comments were like little jabs, constant and stinging. John did his best to back me up, but there were moments I saw him caught in the middle, trying to please everyone. As the big day drew closer, the remarks didn't let up. We were at the final tasting for the wedding menu when Martha brought up the guest list again. "So, Emily, you've really invited your entire team? All those men?" Her tone was as smooth as silk, but the implication was clear. "Yeah, they're a big part of my life," I replied, trying not to let her see she was getting to me. "They're looking forward to celebrating with us." Karen chimed in, her voice dripping with false concern. "Isn't that a bit inappropriate? I mean, it's your day, but you know, appearances and all." I bit back a sharper retort, settling for, "They're just friends, Karen. John knows them well." John jumped in then, his voice firm. "Emily's right. They're great guys. Let's focus on the food, huh? How's the chicken?" He was trying, I'd give him that. The wedding day itself was a blur of smiles, dances, and thankfully, minimal drama. Martha managed to keep her comments to a minimum, and Karen was too busy judging the flower arrangements to stir up much trouble. At the reception, though, after a few glasses of champagne, Karen found me alone by the bar. "Emily, just a heads up, Mom and I will be keeping an eye on things, you know, after the wedding." Her words slurred slightly, but her sharp gaze told me she was sober enough to mean what she said. I frowned, turning to face her fully. "What's that supposed to mean, Karen?" "Just that, we care about John. A lot. We're here to protect him, from whatever might come." She patted my hand in a patronizing way that made my skin crawl. I took a deep breath, counted to 10, and decided to let it go for the night. For John's sake, I plastered on a smile and rejoined the party. The rest of the evening went off without a hitch, and John and I slipped away, finally married and ready to start our life together. As we drove off to our honeymoon, his hand in mine, I felt a mix of joy and apprehension. The wedding was over, but something told me the real challenges were just beginning. The news hit like a wave when I found out I was pregnant. Overjoyed, I couldn't wait to tell John. We'd been talking about starting a family, and this felt like the perfect next chapter for us. John's reaction was everything I hoped for. His eyes lit up, and he lifted me off the ground in a bear hug right in the middle of our kitchen. "We're gonna have a baby," he exclaimed, laughter and tears mixing on his face. It was a moment of pure happiness, one I wanted to bottle up and keep forever. But then came the hard part, telling his family. Given the cold shoulder I'd gotten so far, I was nervous. We decided to break the news at a family dinner that Sunday. As we drove over, John squeezed my hand, trying to be reassuring. "Whatever happens, we're in this together, right?" he said, glancing over at me with a smile. "Right," I nodded, but the knot in my stomach only tightened. Dinner was already tense when we arrived. Martha was her usual self, controlling the conversation, while Karen seemed on edge, barely acknowledging my presence. When dessert was served, John decided it was now or never. "So, we have some news," he began, his voice steady but filled with excitement. Martha and Karen turned their full attention to us, forks paused midair. "We're expecting a baby," I said, managing a smile despite the anxiety. Martha's reaction was hard to read at first. She just sat there, blinking, before forcing a smile. "Well, that's wonderful news," she said, her voice a bit too high-pitched. Karen, on the other hand, didn't bother hiding her feelings. "A baby, huh? You sure it's John's?" Her words cut through the air, sharp and cold. John's face turned red, and he slammed his hand on the table. "Karen, what the hell?" I felt a chill run down my spine, but I forced myself to speak. "Yes, I'm sure." "Why would you even say that?" Karen shrugged, looking from me to John with a smirk. "Well, you work with a lot of men, Emily. It's a fair question." "That's out of line, Karen. Totally out of line," John shot back, his tone harsh. Martha intervened then, her voice soothing but with an undercurrent of steel. Now, let's not jump to conclusions. We're just surprised, that's all. Right, Karen?" Karen muttered something under her breath and pushed her chair back. "I need some air," she announced, before stalking off. The rest of the evening went downhill. We left soon after Karen's exit, the car ride home filled with silence and unsaid words. I could tell John was furious and embarrassed, and I didn't know how to comfort him without stirring up more anger. "John, I'm sorry about that," I finally said as we neared our house. "It's not your fault, Em. It's Karen. She's out of line. We'll handle it," he replied, his grip on the steering wheel tight. As we pulled into our driveway, I couldn't shake off Karen's words or the look in her eye. It was clear she was brewing up a storm, and I had a sinking feeling that this was just the beginning. Her question about the baby's paternity was more than just a jab, it was a declaration of war. The weeks following the dinner were a mixed bag. Work kept me busy, and my pregnancy was progressing well, but the tension with John's family, especially Karen, was always lurking in the background. One particularly grueling day at the office, I was wrapping up late. Most of my team had already headed out, and I was looking forward to getting home and putting my feet up. That's when Mike, one of my coaches, popped his head back in the door. "Hey, Emily, you heading out soon? I can give you a lift if you need, my route's past your place today." I hesitated for a moment, aware of Karen's insinuations, but then reality kicked in. It was just a ride. "Sure, thanks, Mike. I'm just about done here." As we walked to his car, I was grateful for the company. Mike was always easy to talk to, and I needed to unwind after a long day. We chatted about the usual, team stuff, upcoming games, nothing personal. When he dropped me off, I thanked him and thought nothing more of it. That evening, John came home looking stormier than I'd seen him in a long time. He stormed into the kitchen, where I was starting on dinner, and slammed his keys on the counter. "Emily, we need to talk," he said, his voice tight. I turned off the stove, my heart sinking. "What's wrong, John?" He pulled out his phone, showing me a video. It was me, getting into Mike's car. Karen sent me this. She's making claims, about you and Mike. She's saying. I felt sick. The video was harmless, but with Karen's spin, I could imagine what she was suggesting. John, it's nothing. He just gave me a ride home because it was on his way. John ran his hands through his hair, clearly trying to calm himself. I know. It's just, her constant digging and poking. It's just hard, you know? Having my sister turn against my wife like this. The next day, things took a turn for the worse. Karen had escalated her campaign against me by calling our office anonymously, spreading rumors about my inappropriate relationships with the team. My boss pulled me aside, concerned. Emily, you know I don't usually pay attention to gossip, but these calls, they're quite specific. Is everything all right? I reassured him, angry and embarrassed, that Karen's lies had reached my workplace. Everything's fine, really. Just some family drama spilling over. I'm sorry it's gotten this far. He nodded, understanding but clearly uncomfortable. All right, just handle it, okay? We can't have this affecting the team. After Karen's anonymous calls, the atmosphere at work changed. It wasn't just the whispers, it was the looks. People I'd worked with for years, who joked around and shared coffee breaks with me, now hesitated, their eyes flicking away too quickly when I caught them staring. I walked into the locker room one day to grab some files when I overheard a couple of the newer team members whispering. Just weird, isn't it? Wonder if it's true what they say about her. One of them muttered, not noticing my approach. I cleared my throat, and they both spun around, their faces going red. If you have something to ask me, do it to my face. Not behind my back, I said, my voice colder than I intended. The taller one, a rookie named Tom, stuttered out an apology. Sorry, Emily. It's just the rumors and all. What, that I'm having affairs with half the team? I snatched the files I came for, slamming the cabinet a little harder than necessary. It's crap, and you do well to remember that. I left them standing there, probably more scared of me now than of any tabloid trash they heard. This was what Karen wanted, to make me doubt myself, to isolate me. I wasn't going to let her win. Back in my office, I tried to focus on the game strategies for the upcoming weekend. But my phone buzzed nonstop, texts from John asking if I was okay, calls from unknown numbers that I started ignoring. The weight of the situation was suffocating. Later, Mike knocked and came in, closing the door softly behind him. He looked serious, which was a departure from his usual easygoing self. Emily, you all right? This talk going around, it's garbage, you know that, right? His concern was genuine, and for a second, I felt my composure waver. I know, Mike. Thanks, I managed, mustering a weak smile. It's just hard, you know? To be questioned like this, about my professional conduct, because of some family feud. Mike nodded, leaning against the desk. People talk, but they'll see it for what it is eventually. You built up too much goodwill here for this to stick. I appreciated his words, and after he left, I felt a little better. Maybe not all was lost. Maybe the team would see through the nonsense after all. But the day wasn't over yet. As I was leaving, one of the administrative staff, Sarah, caught up with me at my car. She looked nervous, clutching a bunch of papers to her chest. Emily, I didn't know who else to tell. There's been more calls. Not just to the office, but to some of the sponsors. I felt a chill run down my spine. What exactly did they say, Sarah? She shuffled the papers, pulling out a couple with scribbled notes. Mostly insinuations. That you're not representing the team well, that your personal life might be a risk to our reputation. It's nonsense, but some of the sponsors are getting antsy. I took the papers from her, my hands shaking slightly. Thanks for telling me, Sarah. I'll handle it. Driving home, I felt the weight of the world on my shoulders. How could I fight this? Karen's venom was spreading, poisoning everything I cared about. We decided to host a big celebration for the birth of our son, inviting both families to share in our joy. It was supposed to be a day of laughter and love, a chance to bring everyone closer and perhaps mend some fences. The house was filled with the sound of cheerful chatter and the sweet aroma of baked goods. As the party was in full swing, Karen arrived, her expression unreadable. She held an envelope in her hand, which she clutched a little too tightly. The mood shifted when she walked straight up to me, handing me the envelope with a tight smile. "Happy holidays, Emily," Karen said, her voice dripping with faux sweetness as she slid the envelope across the table toward me. "What's this?" I asked, not touching the envelope, feeling John's grip tighten. "A little gift. For peace of mind," Karen replied, her eyes glinting with malice. I glanced at John, who nodded slightly, and I steeled myself before opening the envelope. Inside was a paternity test voucher. My heart sank, but I wasn't about to give her the satisfaction of seeing me upset. "You serious right now, Karen?" John's voice was low, dangerous. "Why not prove it, Emily? If you're so sure," Karen taunted, leaning back in her chair, a smirk playing on her lips. I looked around the table at the shocked faces of the family. Then, something in me snapped. I was done being the victim in Karen's twisted little game. "You want a test, Karen? Fine. Let's do it. Let's clear the air once and for all," I said, my voice steady even though my heart was pounding. John was staring at Karen, his expression hard. "And when it shows that I'm the father, Karen, I want you to stop this. Stop all your crap." Karen shrugged, looking around at the family members who were whispering among themselves. "Sure, when it shows John is the father." The next week was a whirlwind of doctor's appointments and waiting. When the results came back, John and I opened them together. No surprise, John was indeed the father. We called another family meeting, this time at our home. Karen and Martha arrived, looking slightly apprehensive. I handed them the test results without a word. Karen opened the envelope and read the results. The color drained from her face as she realized what it meant. Martha read over her shoulder, her expression crumbling into one of embarrassment. John took a deep breath before he spoke, his disappointment palpable. "This needs to stop, Karen. Mom, I can't believe you supported this. We're supposed to be family." The room was heavy with tension, the air thick with unspoken regrets. Martha looked at me, then at John, and finally at the floor. "I'm sorry, Emily. We were wrong." Karen was silent, her usual bravado gone. She muttered a low apology, before avoiding my gaze. As they left, the relief was palpable. Although the air had cleared somewhat, the wounds were deep. It would take time to heal, if at all. But as John and I looked at our son, sleeping peacefully in his crib, we knew we'd weather any storm for him. After the paternity test fiasco settled, I couldn't shake off a lingering sense of injustice. Despite proving Karen wrong, the sting of her accusations still burned bright. The whole ordeal had sparked a flame of revenge in me that I hadn't known I possessed. Karen's birthday was just around the corner, and an idea began to form in my mind, a plan to give her a taste of her own medicine. The day of Karen's birthday arrived, and the family gathered at John's parents' house for the celebration. Everyone was in high spirits, chattering and laughing, oblivious to the storm that was about to break. I had managed to keep my plan a secret, even from John, who I knew would disapprove of any kind of retaliation. As Karen opened her gifts, laughing and thanking everyone, I felt my heart pound in my chest. It was now or never. I approached her with a serene smile, the same DNA test certificate in hand that she had so callously gifted me months ago. "Happy birthday, Karen," I said, my voice calm as I handed her the envelope. "I thought you might appreciate this little gift, just as I did." Karen's face dropped as she took the envelope, confusion turning to apprehension. "What's this?" she asked, her voice a tremble. "A paternity test," I replied coolly. "After all, if you have nothing to hide, there's no harm, right?" The room fell silent. Everyone's eyes were on Karen, then on me. Martha looked from me to her daughter, clearly shocked. Karen hesitated, her face pale, then laughed nervously. You're joking, right, Emily? No joke, Karen. Fair is fair, I said, meeting her gaze steadily. Under the weight of the family's expectant looks, Karen finally agreed. The test was done the following week, and we all awaited the results. When they came back, they revealed the shocking truth: Paul was not the father of Karen's children. The news broke during another family gathering, and chaos ensued. How could you, Karen? Martha's voice was filled with disbelief and anger. Paul, silent until then, stood up, his face hard with betrayal. Who is he, Karen? Who? Before Karen could respond, I played my final card. I pulled out my phone and showed them a video of Karen kissing an unknown man passionately at the stadium, a man who was later identified as Paul's best friend. It's not what it looks like, Karen yelled, desperation creeping into her voice as she turned to face the family, who watched in stunned silence. Emily set this up. She's trying to ruin me. I did nothing but uncover the truth, Karen. The same truth you were so keen to find in my life, I said, my voice steady despite the pounding of my heart. I explained that I had hired a private investigator after her relentless accusations. What he found was years of deceit on Karen's part. The revelation shattered the family. Accusations flew, tears were shed, and in the end, Paul and Karen's marriage crumbled under the weight of her infidelities. Karen tried to blame me for everything, but the evidence was irrefutable. In the aftermath, John and I decided it was best to distance ourselves from the drama. We focused on our own family, our little boy who was growing up so fast. Occasionally, we would hear snippets of Karen's tumultuous life, but we chose to stay out of it. Instead, we treasured every moment with our son, building a world around him filled with love and devoid of chaos. Sitting on our porch one evening, John wrapped his arm around me, a soft sigh escaping him. You know, in the end, I think we did the right thing. For us, for him. I nodded, leaning into his embrace. We did, John. We really did. No matter what came our way, we faced it together. That's what family does. As the sun set, casting a warm glow over the horizon, I felt a profound sense of contentment. We had faced challenges, but we had faced them together, and that made all the difference. Our future, bright and promising, was all that mattered now.